federal government has stated that the Naira-For-Crude deal with local refineries will continue. Analysts say the deal will likely reduce the local petrol price, particularly in the face of declining global oil prices triggered by global trade war. To have this conversation on Naira-For-Crude policy analysis of the pros and cons therein is Comrade Barrister Fabian Nwigbo, who is the chairperson Nigeria Labour Congress NLC Enugu State Council. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay. Can you provide us a brief overview of the Naira-For-Crude policy and its intended objective within Nigeria's economic framework?
All right, thank you. For me, it's a great policy that is has the interest of the public, at its center. It is a policy that's designed to ensure that transactions on crude and refined products are done in Naira against the dollar, realization of the transactions. Before the policy, for you to import crude, you have to exchange the Naira to dollar. Refine, like the mega refineries. So you bought in dollar, you have to sell in dollar. But this crude for dollar policy has it that government, the NNPCL, will sell crude to the local refineries in Naira. And when they refine, they still sell in Naira as against the old regime. And you can see the obvious implication during the last regime of 6 months. I will call it a strong by the NNPCL, former boss, Karen. Within that period, price of refined products dropped from 1,003 down to as low as 890. And as soon as the policy stopped on the 31st of March 2025, the price of refined products tends to rise again from 890 to 960 that is selling today. So, but the federal government have come standing to say that the policy shouldn't be tenured, that it's going to be indefinite. And as such, local refineries will source crude using Naira. And when they refine, they sell in Naira. With that, the pressure on the marketers struggling to buy dollar to transact in crude or refined products will reduce. So it's a welcome development, it's a good policy, and we are optimistic that if it continues over time, that the tendency that the cost of refined products, the costs will drop, the selling price will drop. It's there. During the past 6 months, we saw the outcome. Not only that, it's going to make Naira to be strong. It is going to make the Naira to be strong. As against when people scamper to change the Naira into dollar to enable them transact in oil products. So it's a welcome development, and our fears that as usual, Nigerian system, where implementation is always a problem. Whether government, its implementation, the implementation of the policy, is a problem. Of course, every policy has its own challenges. But I believe that if they become realistic, the challenges may not outweigh the advantages that is expected. of this policy.
In what ways could the Naira-for-Crude policy impact the stability of the Naira against other major currencies?
Okay, when the pressure that used to be on Naira because of marketers looking for dollars to trade on both crude and refined products reduces, it is going to strengthen our Naira. It's going to strengthen our Naira. When people start trading with Naira as against the dollar, of course, it's going to give some strength, some level of value on our Naira.
What kind of government support and infrastructure is necessary to ensure the successful implementation of this policy?
Okay, like I said earlier on, that the challenge we may have is the system that is supposed to drive this policy. I mean, the NNPCL not being realistic. A situation where they may tell you the OPEC quota, we need to meet up with the OPEC quota. We're struggling to ensure that we work within the OPEC quota, and as a result, it will be difficult for us to supply the local refineries because they are targeting on the dollars they will generate from the exports. So, but if they are real, if they decide to implement the policy effectively and with some level of honesty, they'll be able to supply the local refineries. So the major challenge will be sincerity with regards to implementation of this policy. If the drivers, the NNPCL, becomes realistic about the implementation, I believe, and I'm optimistic to that extent, that it's a welcome policy, it's a policy that is going to impact on the life of our people. Because our economy is almost a mono economy. Every aspect of our economy depends on the oil. So whenever the oil costs, every aspect of our economy catches cold. So we are praying the NNPC to ensure that they implement this policy with high level of integrity and honesty.
Can the Naira-for-Crude policy be viewed as a sustainable long-term solution for Nigeria's economic problems?
Of course, when you talk about solving economic problems, it may not be a single variable that will do that. But you know, this policy, it's an omnibus policy in the sense that we, like I said, that about 89% of our economy is dependent on oil. And as long as we improve on oil transactions and issues that relates around oil, once oil improves, every other aspect of our economy will naturally improve. So it's an omnibus policy in the sense that it's going to affect a lot of variables that play roles in the development of our economy. So if it is sustained, as the federal government have promised, they said indefinite. If it becomes indefinite, I am optimistic, I continue to use this word, that the people will rejoice.
What kind of government supports and infrastructure is necessary to implement this policy and ensure successful implementation of it as well?
Okay, I think one of the areas is just what Mr. President said, that by the end of 2025, that we'll be producing about 2 million barrels per day. And by 2026, 3 million barrels. So if they put the necessary infrastructure on ground to ensure that we produce up to this level, including ensuring reduction in oil theft, that's a major problem. If they were able to close up the gaps, the channel of oil theft here and there, and ensure that they produce at a maximum point, to the extent of 2 million barrels or 3 million barrels as they have promised, and the infrastructures on ground to support that, I think it's going to help to achieve this purpose, the purpose of this policy. So a major thing is to the government to work hard to reduce oil theft and waste here and there, and ensure that the necessary infrastructure that will help the system to produce at a very high rate is put in place. Also, the change in the NNPCL board, I think, is also a welcome development. People, when they come into the system new, they work hard to ensure that the system begins to work and is sustained. So we believe that the present leadership of NNPCL will ensure also that the target of the federal government with regards to this crude Naira policy will go a long way to achieve the purpose for which that policy was set in place.
So how do you think neighboring countries and the global oil markets will receive this news of the Naira-For-Crude policy?
I don't think if we should be looking at the way they will say it. I think what is important to us is that this is a policy that is going to help to grow our economy. The neighboring countries, the foreign countries, or whatever you call them, they're also working around the clock to ensure that the economy is better. A lot of the countries are working hard to tighten up the economy to ensure that they have a surging economy. So, and that one wouldn't be a different. If we find this policy as a veritable tool that will help us to grow our economy, I don't think it is necessary to start looking at the feelings of the neighboring countries or the foreign countries. What is important is that we are growing our economy, and as we are working hard to grow the economy, we are not intentionally trying to do a thing that will affect the economy of others negatively. So what we are doing is a thing that will help to strengthen our Naira, beef up our economy, and better the lots of the citizens of this country. So whatever interpretation the neighboring countries may give to it, or the foreign countries, may not be material at this point in time. I think you are talking about the opinion of the neighboring countries and the foreign countries, right?
No. I thought we've moved past that. I was asking if you do you foresee any risk of inflation arising from the implementation of this policy? I mean, especially given the existing economic challenges that we are facing in the country currently.
I don't think if there will be any infringement on the part of the neighboring countries or the foreign countries with regards to this policy. What infringement? The only challenge we may have is where we don't produce up to the OPEC quota. I think OPEC have a quota, a target, a country, a member country must achieve at every point in time. That's where we may have problem. But as long as we are producing and achieving OPEC quota, and also doing or implementing our policy locally, I'm not sure anybody's economy is going to be infringed by this policy.
Barrister Fabian, in a nutshell, what do you think of this Naira-For-Crude policy? What are your hopes for this policy when implemented, and how do you think the government should carry out this particular policy, I mean, for a smooth run and for the help of the country's economy?
Okay, my take actually is that the policy is a welcome development if it is carefully implemented and strictly implemented, if it is implemented with some level of honesty. It is going to help our economy. For instance, I said within the 6 months that the former boss of NNPC tried this policy, we saw the results. The price of refined products, fuel for instance, dropping from 1,300 per liter to about 890 per liter. You can imagine the difference, the wide difference. And you know, as the price of oil is dropping, it affects price of other commodities in Nigeria because oil seems to be the mainstay of our economy. So if the policy is implemented with high level integrity and honesty, it is going to help to grow our economy. All the government needs to do also is to ensure that at all point in time that they supply the needed local requirements or requests from the local refineries. Because where the excuses of working hard to meet our OPEC quota and doing this, thereby starving the local refinery, it will be a policy without teeth. It's going to be a toothless policy. So, but if they ensure that not only that they meet OPEC quota, but they also provide the required number of barrels to the local refineries, including the modular refineries, I'm optimistic that this policy is going to help the economy of this country.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.